Coming up on a newscast, President Yoon Jongmin will attend the NATO summit in Madrid. This will be his first overseas trip since taking office. Senior defense officials from more than 40 countries are taking part in the Shangri-La Dialogue. Seoul's defense chief will hold one-on-one meetings with various counterparts. Some in South Korea are experiencing the so-called long COVID, which comes after recovering from the virus. Authorities laid out plans to study these symptoms and devise guidelines for treatments. Hello, hope you're wrapping up the week well. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. President Yoon Jongmin will be taking part in the NATO summit in Spain to expand Seoul's role on the global stage. It remains to be seen whether there will be a one-on-one with Japan's Prime Minister. Yoon Jongmin starts us off.
President Yoon Jongmin will become the first ever South Korean head of state to attend a NATO summit when he takes part in the summit talks in Madrid later this month. Seoul's top office confirmed the new president's attendance of the multilateral summit set for June 29th through the 30th on Friday in what will be his first major diplomatic test abroad. As one of the invited countries to the summit, as Seoul is not a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Yoon will participate in a dialogue session among leaders of the 30 NATO allies and 8 partner countries, including Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. The decades-old Western Alliance group is expected to work on its new strategic concept following political and security challenges it faces involving Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the rise of China. On the sidelines of the summit, President Yoon will hold bilaterals with leaders of a number of European countries and meet with his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden for a second time following their one-on-one in Seoul last month. Much focus in South Korea and Japan are whether Yoon will hold separate talks with Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to try to mend frosty Seoul-Tokyo ties over historical and territorial issues. Neither Seoul nor Tokyo have confirmed anything on this matter for now. It also remains to be seen whether there will be a three-way meeting between Yoon, Biden, and Kishida. It's also likely that the South Korean leader will meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, as the leader of the war-torn nation is to be invited to the Madrid summit too. President Yoon's trip to the NATO meeting comes as the new South Korean leader places much emphasis on expanding Seoul's role on the global stage. There, he aims to bolster cooperation with NATO allies and partners for a rules-based international order. Yoon Jongmin, Arirang News.
More than 40 countries are taking part in Asia's top defense summit in Singapore. Seoul's defense chief held talks with his Chinese counterpart focusing on North Korea issues. Bae Eun-ji brings the highlights from day one.
The defense ministers of South Korea and China met Friday for the first time in 2.5 years. At the Shangri-La Dialogue, a defense summit in Singapore, normally an annual event that was cancelled for the past 2 years due to the pandemic, the two officials agreed to strengthen defense ties in practical and mutually beneficial ways. On North Korea, Seoul's Lee Jong-sop said the situation is serious because of Pyongyang's recent series of missile launches, but stressed that South Korea and China can cooperate to have North Korea realize that there's more to gain from giving up nuclear weapons than the cost it has to pay to own them. Beijing's Wei Fenghe also pledged to cooperate toward the goal of maintaining peace on the peninsula.
To sum up, the meeting was very useful, and it was a great opportunity for both of us to understand each other.
Meanwhile, Lee also held bilateral talks with Canada, New Zealand, and Singapore. The 3-day summit that'll run until Sunday has a number of meetings and forums throughout the weekend as well. On Saturday, Lee will hold a bilateral meeting with Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin. This will be followed by a trilateral meeting between the top defense officials from South Korea, U.S., and China. They will likely discuss ways to cooperate on ways to deter threats from North Korea. On Sunday, South Korea's Defense Minister Lee Jong-sop will deliver a speech at a plenary session here at the Shangri-La Hotel. He plans to announce this new South Korean administration's policy towards North Korea. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News, Singapore.
China's ambassador to the UN says Beijing does not want to see North Korea carrying out a nuclear test, but no comments on how Beijing might react if the regime does conduct one. Zhang Jun told Reuters that the North's denuclearization is one of China's key goals, but also urged the U.S. government to ease unilateral sanctions on Pyongyang and halt military exercises with Seoul. He underlined only dialogue can improve the situation. Such remarks come 2 weeks after Beijing and Moscow vetoed more UNSC sanctions on the reclusive state amid speculations that the North is on the verge of conducting the first nuke test since 2017. Top diplomats of South Korea and the U.S. will hold their first in-person talks in Washington on Monday. Park Jin and Antony Blinken are expected to cover a variety of topics, including supply chains, economic security, and other global issues. During the FM's 4-day visit to the States, issues related to the peninsula should take center stage as there are speculations the regime could conduct a nuke test. The session comes less than a month after the Yoon-Biden summit was held. Some people who recovered from the coronavirus still experience some symptoms. South Korean authorities laid out plans to study the so-called long COVID and come up with guidelines for treatments. Also, more hospitals will be able to test for the virus and treat it as well. Song Yoo-jin brings the updates.
Long COVID. Common symptoms include headaches, fatigue, difficulty in breathing, depression and anxiety, and muscle aches. According to the World Health Organization, they appear usually within 3 months from the onset of COVID-19 and last for at least 2 months. Data from the National Institute of Health last year showed that some 79% of South Koreans infected with COVID-19 suffer from at least one symptom of long COVID. There hasn't been any specific treatment for long COVID, but now South Korean authorities are taking action.
A lot of people have been suffering from long COVID, but there hasn't been any proper research done into it. The government will launch a large-scale investigation to systematically analyze the causes and symptoms of long COVID and will create treatment guidelines.
The government will conduct a cohort study on 10,000 people later this year and publish the guidelines in the first half of next year. There has been research on what people experienced post-COVID, but it focused on hospitalized patients who are severely ill. This time, the research will also include children, teenagers, and adults without underlying health conditions. Also, to speed up the testing and treatment process, more medical centers across the country will handle the various stages of COVID-19.
We will secure more than 5,000 medical institutions where testing, treatment, and prescriptions will all be possible. We'll call them one-stop treatment institutions.
These one-stop institutions will include respiratory clinics and other hospitals selected by heads of local governments. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Spending on transportation and travel using credit cards soared in April as COVID-19 restrictions were lifted. There was also an increase in spending on accommodation and leisure. Lee Dae-hyun helps us look beyond the digits.
It seems more people are now returning to pre-COVID-19 normal life, evidence of which can be seen with an increase in travel demand. Here at Seoul Station, travelers are carrying luggage, with some looking excited about their trips.
I just arrived here from Busan. Only window seats were available up to several months ago. But now train seats are fully booked, even on weekdays.
I visited Jeju Island a few weeks ago and the flight was fully booked.
Total card use for payments rose 11% on year in April, of which public transport spending increased almost 70%. This is largely driven by the lifting of COVID-19 measures.
According to data released by South Korea's Credit Finance Association, card spending for public transport stood at 1.08 trillion Korean won, or around $1.4 billion in April. On top of that, spending on business facility management and business support services, which includes travel agencies, rose 40.4% to over $252 million. Lifting social distancing has also contributed to high card spending for accommodation in restaurants and businesses related to leisure activities. Accommodation and restaurant spending jumped almost 23% on year to $9.1 billion. The figure for leisure businesses rose 22% to over $1.1 billion. According to one credit card company, the number of approved card settlements at duty-free shops has also seen a rise. The company reported that card spending for flight tickets and at duty-free shops increased 19% compared to the same period last year. Overseas spending also jumped 17%. And the head of the Korean Credit Card Academic Society predicts even more travel-related spending ahead.
With travel restrictions eased, demand for overseas travel is seeing a rapid rise. Card spending in travel-related sectors is expected to peak from June to July during the summer vacation period.
He added that as COVID-19 becomes endemic, total card spending is likely to continue to increase this year. Lee Hyun, Arirang News.
Beijing confirmed 29 new cases on Friday following a cluster infection at a bar in the capital. Officials say more than 4,000 people have been in close contact with the infected. Over in Shanghai, where lockdowns were lifted last week, 11 more cases are confirmed. Residents in 14 of the city's 16 districts will have to take PCR tests over the weekend. Over in Hong Kong, more than 670 cases were reported for the second straight day. The virus tally was at around 200 last month. Authorities are on high alert to contain the virus as President Xi Jinping may visit in July. South Korea posted double deficits for the first time in a quarter century. In April, the current account was in the red due to higher cost of fuel and other commodities. The government continued to run a fiscal deficit as it has for the last 4 years. Here's Ji-young with a breakdown of the figures.
For the first time in 25 years, South Korea is experiencing double deficits. With fiscal balance already deep in the red, the country has recorded its first current account deficit in 2 years. The latest trade data released on Friday by the Bank of Korea shows that the balance of trade in April came to a deficit of $80 million. The shortfall is attributed to the soaring commodity prices.
Although exports of goods have been solid, the goods account surplus dropped significantly as imports of goods jumped, led by higher commodity prices.
The country had more exports than imports of goods in April, but the size of the surplus slipped to nearly $3 billion, down 40% compared to a year earlier. Led by semiconductors and petroleum products, goods exports amounted to roughly $59 billion, up 11% on-year. But imports of goods stood at roughly $56 billion, rising by more than 16% due to high commodity prices. Amid the global supply chain bottleneck and the war in Ukraine, import prices of commodities surged by almost 38% on-year. Also, a major driver that pushed the balance of trade into deficit overall was seasonal overseas dividend payments, which amounted to nearly $4 billion. On top of the trade deficit, South Korea's fiscal balance has been reeling in the red since 2019. In the first quarter of this year, the government's total revenues amounted to roughly $134 billion, while total spending stood at around $160 billion, resulting in a deficit of $26 billion. One expert warned that what's more problematic is fiscal deficit.
Current account deficit is a pretty transitory phenomenon. We have to see what's going to come throughout the year. For me, I think the really serious problem is deficit in the government spending. And the government spending deficit is too big, and it's been going on too long.
He added that the government should seek ways to reduce any excessive spending. Ji-young, Arirang News.
The war in Ukraine seriously disrupted supplies of wheat. Adding to that are weak harvests in other major producers, including China and India, the latter of which banned wheat exports. Crops have been hit by a lack of rain as well. Kim Hyun-sung zooms in on this phenomenon.
Europe's wheat harvest is expected to tumble this year. The European Union is expected to produce 5% less wheat than last year, according to Strategy Grains, a consulting firm for agriculture. France, which makes up almost a fifth of Europe's agricultural production, is also facing ahead a 5% drop in wheat. The disappointing harvest forecast is stoking worries as supplies from two of the world's biggest wheat and grain exporters, Ukraine and Russia, are affected by the war in Ukraine, and only a few countries are left to pick up the slack in global wheat supplies. Analysts had earlier forecast disappointing crop yields in other global bread baskets, including India, Australia, and China. The smaller than usual wheat harvest can be attributed to the dry weather.
I think it's going to affect us both in terms of domestic production and global production because the weird weather is apparently hitting everywhere. The lack of rain seems to be a global problem, not just a Korean one.
A pinch in wheat supplies could drive up food prices, not just for bread, but also for meat.
A lot of that grain was used for livestock feed. We probably will have enough money to feed we will probably have enough grain to feed the people, but it will raise the price of livestock, and that's probably behind what's the rise in prices of beef and pork globally.
Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, fierce battling continues in Severodonetsk, one of the last parts of the eastern Donbas region still controlled by Ukraine. In a video address, President Zelensky said there hasn't been any significant change on the battlefield, with Russia controlling most of the city. However, he added that Ukrainian forces are making advancements in select southern regions. Ukraine's defense ministry also announced it captured new ground in Kherson through a counterattack. The South Korean Army has been working on developing advanced combat capabilities. A squad armed with AI, drones, and other cutting-edge technology displayed what they can do. Han Sung-woo has the details.
The future of military combat has arrived. The South Korean Army on Friday officially launched its Army Tiger Demonstration Brigade combat team at the 25th Infantry Division in Yangju City, Gyeonggi-do Province. Soldiers showcased a range of state-of-the-art equipment through both manned and unmanned operation rehearsals. Army Tiger is a futuristic combat system the military is developing that incorporates artificial intelligence and other cutting-edge technologies inspired by the Fourth Industrial Revolution to maximize soldier efficiency and survival chances.
Moving forward, we will equip ourselves with a stable balance of the Army Tiger combat system, the DroneBot combat system, and the Warrior platform to evolve into a state-of-the-art army.
The Warrior platform's also an ongoing defense project aimed at arming troops with high-tech gear so that each soldier can serve as an independent combat platform. Such equipment includes ergonomic bulletproof helmets, night vision goggles, and infrared designators capable of distinguishing friend from foe.
We will do our best to make the Army Tiger demonstration combat team serve as a cornerstone for the Army to win any future war.
Starting with the 25th Infantry Division, the Army's gunning to transition all combat brigades into Army Tiger ones by 2040, and Chief of Staff Park Jung-hwan believes that in 2025, soldiers will be able to fight in war zones with AI-powered drones alongside them. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
BTS released a new anthology album, a 3-disc set covering the past 9 years of their career. It includes demos of some of the most popular songs, along with new ones as well. Yoon Jongmin tells us more.
BTS first debuted on June 13th of 2013. 9 years on, and the K-pop sensation has packaged the first chapter of their legend into a single 3-CD album set for release on Friday. It is their first album in 11 months since the release of Butter last summer. This 48-track album is an anthology album, meaning it puts together all of their biggest hits, songs that have never been released on an album before, and of course fan favorites that have been championed over the past 9 years. The first teaser music video of the title track Yet to Come was shared on June 8th, and it became the fastest teaser to cross 1 million views on YouTube.
So the big single that I think everyone in the world is going to be listening to and talking about, maybe for the entire summer, is Yet to Come. It has the power to become their next global hit. And I think that's really exciting to wait and hear.
Each of the 3 CDs has a new track. The title track Yet to Come is on CD 1. It takes fans down memory lane, but the bright and melancholic tone of the song also delivers the group's positive message of hope to the world that the best moments are yet to come for us all. CD 2 features the new track Run BTS, full of upbeat hip-hop tracks that highlight the passion and free spirit of the 7-piece group. And CD 3 is a dedication to ARMY with the new track For Youth. Beginning with the sounds of fans cheering at past concerts, the third CD champions their global fans. After the official release of their latest album today, BTS is set to promote their latest record on domestic music shows throughout next week, something which the band hasn't done since March 2020. 이은진, Arirang News.
In South Korea, English education begins at a very young age, continuing through college and even the learner's professional life. So why is mastering the language considered essential here? Choi Min-jung files us this report.
It's 11 a.m. on a weekday, and there are around 80 students studying in this classroom at an English language academy. They're here regardless of age or profession, with a single goal in mind: a high TOEIC score. The test of English for International Communication, also more widely known as TOEIC, is an international standardized test of English skill for non-native speakers. In South Korea, TOEIC test scores have become increasingly more necessary for those wishing to make themselves a strong candidate to enter universities, find jobs, or get promotions. English in Korea is taught at a rather young age. Many parents tend to invest a lot of money and time on their children so they can attend English kindergartens. And some also hire English tutors to help their children pass the level test needed to go to such facilities. However, there are other educational institutions like LSY Education Institution for Gifted Children that offer English education that focus on language acquisition without a competitive element.
I've seen some younger kids develop tics like blinking or coughing when they are forced into an environment where they don't understand the language. Here, we try to help kids develop confidence first in their mother tongue and then combine English in conversations when they are ready.
Studying English is mandatory for students in South Korea beginning in the 3rd grade. Middle and high schoolers have to invest even more time on English in order to take the National College Entrance Exam, the Suneung. Naturally, students are more exposed to textbook English. So how hard is the Suneung? We asked a number of native speakers to solve some questions. Do you have your answers?
Not yet. It's pretty complicated. I think it's either 4 or 5.
What about you, Steve?
I'm still reading it. Yeah, it's 5.
Oh, I better go 5 as well then.
Yeah, the correct answer is number 5. So you guys did get it correct.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
Took you some time though, right?
Yeah, right.
What did you think of it?
I think it's difficult. It's obviously difficult even for intelligent guys like us.
I will go for number 3.
The correct answer is actually number 5.
Number 5, fantastic. So I'm wrong. Quite challenging. And what grade are we giving this to? Like, how old are the kids?
High school seniors. It's for college entrance.
As I say, you know, the competition in the Korea is extremely high. And the pressure for the kids is really, really high too. So I don't really blame anything. It's basically the competition. So totally right. You know, the kids got to study a lot. So
I'm looking at these kids. I'm very impressed by the English skills. I'm very impressed by the high vocabulary that's instilled within them. But I do oftentimes think about perhaps the practicality of emphasizing such grammar and vocab skills.
Stephen Krashen, the most frequently cited scholar in the field of language education, says that people do not acquire language by speaking or writing or by studying the rules of grammar.
You want to get better on these standardized tests? Go to Starbucks, bring a couple of novels, sit back, relax, and read, and you'll do absolutely fine. All the studies show you do very well on these tests if you do lots of pleasure reading, not just the TOEIC, but the TOEFL, all those things.
The hard truth is that standardized tests are still required in today's society. However, people must remember that learning a language is not just about achieving high scores. As experts say, acquiring a second language, that be English, Chinese, or German, is not just about the grammar or correcting errors. What's important is being able to listen and read as preparation to speak without anxiety. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Make sure to have your umbrellas handy tomorrow. Most inland regions, including Seoul, will be under isolated rainfall. This is due to the ongoing instability in the atmosphere constantly creating rain clouds. Conditions may feel stuffy and humid with the combination of rain and higher temperatures. For this weekend, maximum temperatures will be nearing 30 to 31 degrees Celsius in Seoul. Scattered outbreaks of rain will start tomorrow daytime. The intensity of the rain may vary depending on the movement of the rain clouds. Some regions may see heavy downpours in a short period of time. Inland regions, including the Seoul metropolitan area, can expect 5 to 40 millimeters of rainfall. Jeju Island will see 5 to 20 millimeters. Thunder and lightning may follow at times, so please be extra careful. Morning lows in Seoul and Busan will start off at 19 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul will get up to 31 degrees, Busan 26, Daejeon and Gwangju will reach 30 degrees. Southern parts of the country will see showers again beginning of next week. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
This is where we have to wrap things up, but do stay tuned for our special in-depth segment featuring an interview with former Japanese PM Yukio Hatoyama and a deeper analysis of Seoul-Tokyo ties coming up next. That's all from us for now. Thank you for watching.